Yo! Hegassen here, and today we are talking Captain America. Captain America, the First Avenger. Pretty sure he's not the first Avenger, because isn't Thor, technically older than him? But the first human Avenger. Captain America. There he is, at the back. I don't know why he's at the back. Hawkeye's at the front, and Captain America's at the back? Doesn't make sense. I guess, it wasn't really till Winter Soldier that things really took off for Captain America. But what does that mean for Captain America, the first human Avenger? Let's find out. Captain America. Set in the First World War, we get to see the origin of Captain America and watch Steve Rogers throughout his journey from a small, wimpy guy into the buff, all-American hero that we know and love. So how does it all begin? Well, it starts off and we see Steve, like I say, he's a very weak guy. He can't enlist in the army because he's got all sorts of problems with him. He's been trying to get in there. His friend Bucky has gone off. He found out that his parents have previously served and they're both dead. So he wants to go to the war and fight, do the right thing. He says he doesn't want to kill Nazis, but he doesn't like bullies. That's a very big thing about his personality and his character. Well, he can't go out and physically fight. He hasn't got the physical body. He definitely has the mindset of, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, for what is right. I'll fight for what I believe in if I have to, even though I'm going to constantly get knocked back down. He's got a very high moral compass. Like I say, every time he gets in a fight earlier on, he's just constantly getting knocked down. Every time he stands up, he's like, I can do this all day, and he just gets knocked straight back down again. And his friend Bucky comes in and saves him, and you get the idea that has been Steve's life. He's always tried to get up and fight, always been knocked down, and his friend Bucky is always coming in to help him. So how is he going to get in the war? Well, thankfully, while he's at Stark Expo, which is a nice little callback to Iron Man 2, he gets a conversation overheard by this scientist called Abraham, who's developing this super soldier serum. He's previously used this serum and he found out that it not only buffs the physical attributes of a person, but also the mental attributes. So if you're a bad person, you become even more bad. If you're a good person, you become a better good person. Kind of like Jedi and Sith kind of mentality. You fall down the dark side, you get even darker, but you get more powerful. So that's what the super serum does, because he's tried it before on the main villain of the piece, Red Skull, and Red Skull becomes even more power hungry, delusional, but we'll get into more of him later on. So in Steve, he sees that this guy has the right heart to have these powers. He says later on in the film that, yeah, you can just pick a strong soldier, but is that strong soldier really going to use the powers to its maximum? And he thinks Steve is the right person to do this. But before he buffs up, we're obviously seeing him as this weedy person, and it's this CGI thing where we got this person with a small body, and they've put Steve Rogers' head on the body. For the most part, it looks quite good. Sometimes it looks a little bit weird. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know, your head looks a little bit too big for that neck, or something's not right. It's never really glaring obvious, but there's always that something at the back of your mind where you're like, that doesn't look right. There's something a little bit weird there, but for the most part, it's very, very good. When people are talking about good CGI and stuff in the MCU, I think this is one of the ones that normally gets ignored. It's a good chunk of the beginning of the film where it's like this, and he's not just sitting around; he's doing some action stuff as well. So that's really good. I don't think that gets as much praise as it actually should. And then he goes in this pod, they inject him with the super soldier serum, and then he comes out and he's absolutely buff and ripped, and he's taller, and for some reason his trousers still fit. But it's fast, it's quick. I don't think the science of that is anywhere near true, but it's a great little scene. Everybody's judging him when he steps in, and the second he steps out, everyone's like, hey Steve. All of the women are just like, and straight away he gets into his powers, and he picks them up quite fast. Sometimes it's a little bit like oh, what, so you don't need to work out? You just always buff? He does address it, thankfully, later on in the film. Bucky asks him about it, and he's like, so what, is it permanent? He's like, so far it is. So I guess he doesn't really have to work out much to keep it. And it seems to also mean that he's, his senses are a little bit sharper, his memory and stuff is a little bit sharper because he looks at a map and he can instantly remember where everything is on the map. He doesn't really get any military training though, so as I'll explain later on in the film, he goes into a Hydra base and he sneaks in there perfectly like any super trained soldier would. Where do you get that training from? I guess it may be because his senses are better, that he can have better awareness of his surroundings, but it just seems weird that he doesn't actually get any soldier training because, unfortunately, they wanted an army of super soldiers. He was going to be the first test. The phone's ringing.
2,000 years later.
Yeah, so they wanted an army. Hydra, the villains of the piece, again, I'll get into them in a second. They come in, they destroy all of the serum, so Steve Rogers is the only one. So instead of becoming this fighting force for a little bit, he just becomes like a mascot, like the face of the American military, sign up today kind of guy. And it's only later on in the film that he gets the opportunity to actually test his powers and stuff. So he's had no training. All he does is just punch this one actor who's Hitler. Well, doesn't even punch him, pretends to punch him over and over again, which is a scene I very much appreciated. But yeah, he doesn't get any actual physical training, yet he can still fight like a competent soldier. I guess maybe that's still part of the serum and stuff, just making you an overall better person. But it doesn't quite make sense. But I'll let that little bit slide. But it's always a little thing that bugs me in these films. As a character, what else can we say about Steve? Well, unlike characters like Thor in the last film and like Tony Stark, Iron Man, Steve from the start is, he's already kind of like the perfect guy. Like I say, he's got a very strong moral compass, always does the right thing. So he's not really a character that grows in the sense of character. It's more he just grows in the sense of his physicality and his ability to be this hero that we know. So for that, going back to the film, or at least the first time I saw it, he wasn't really a character that had. I didn't really think had that much depth, that much. You couldn't really latch onto him as much because you don't see any of those flaws like you do in the other characters. You don't see any of those arcs. But throughout the rest of the MCU, you kind of learn that for Steve, it's not about his character and stuff changing. It's about the world around him and him keeping his moral compass. That is his struggle. He's not struggling with any flaw in his personality. He's struggling with finding his place in the world around him and keeping his moral compass aligned while the world around him changes. So that's very much something that I appreciate throughout the whole of the MCU. But in this first film, he's still very much, he starts off as Steve Rogers and he ends as Steve Rogers Captain America. And apart from his muscle tone, there's no real big differences in that character. Also, I just want to briefly touch upon his look. He looks pretty good in this film. He's got that kind of almost comic book accurate suit. There's definitely elements to it. You see the little wings in the on the helmet. The colours are almost there, but it's that little bit more grounded, a little bit more muted. They kind of done that. What if the suit was like from the comics, only a little bit more realistic? Let's add a few more belt straps and stuff like that. But overall, his suit looks really good. You see a few iterations because he has the more when he's like just promoting, he has a little bit more kind of cheesy suit, and then as it goes on, he gets a little bit more, like I say, a bit more usable, grounded one. It looks quite good. And his shield, he's got a shield. His shield looks great. It's made by Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father. What I love about that scene is he's going through all of the shield designs that he's come up with. Not underneath, he just sees this prototype one, and he's like, "Oh, looks simple. I like this one. This will do." And he's like, "Oh no, you don't want that. That's just a prototype." He's like, "Oh well, what's it made of?" He's like, "Oh, made of vibranium." It's like, "Oh, well, can't you make more like this?" It's like, "No, that's all that we got. It's so rare that I've used everything to make that prototype." Why are you using it all to make the prototype if you weren't going to hand it out? You have this really rare mineral and you used it all on a prototype. It doesn't make why not use it on any of the real ones? That always bugs me, but it's a good little scene. It shows that again, he doesn't care about what stuff looks like. He just very practical. This shield's nice and practical. It's nice and light. I like this one. Uh, he cares about appearances a little bit because he tweaks it and puts the stars and stripes on it. But he's still very much yeah, I like this one. No bells and whistles. It's good. So what about the other characters? Well, we got Peggy Carter, who's his love interest in the film, and she looks good and she punches hard. And straight away when you see her, you know that she's a person not to mess with. She has some great little action scenes when the Hydra agents infiltrate him getting his super soldier powers and tries to steal some. She goes out there with a gun, and every single shot that she does is like a crack shot. I think misses maybe twice. But apart from that, even from a really long range, bam, hits him straight in the head. So that's really good. Shows that, even back in the day, back in the World War times before the Avengers, there were still these like kick-ass characters that were like kind of pseudo Avengers, Avengers before the Avengers. So that's really good to see. She was a really good character. She kind of relates a little bit with Steve at the beginning of the film. He's struggling because he hasn't got the manly physique to be the hero that he wants to be. She kind of relates to that because she also gets those looks because she hasn't got the manly physique that everybody expects because obviously she's a woman, and back in the day, it wasn't as tolerated as it would be today. And she sees that more kind of sensitive side and appreciates that sensitive side. And watching their relationship grow in this film is definitely one of the highlights. Speaking of highlights, we have Tommy Lee Jones' character of Chester Phillips, and he is awesome. Almost every single thing he says is like the best line in the film. Constantly, always having the best lines in the film. Everything he says about Steve is hilarious. His last big line at the end of "I ain't gonna kiss ya" is still one of my favourite quotes in all of the MCU. He's a great character. We also have Bucky that I've mentioned before. Looking back at this film, you don't really see Bucky as much. You only kind of see him once in Steve Rogers and Bucky's early days, where they go to the Stark Expo. Weird thing, rewatching it, I'm like, Bucky brings some girls with him, and I'm like, hang on a second, is that Clara Oswald? Is that Genoese Coleman? It is. They need to bring not as that character, just bring Jenna Coleman back into the MCU. She's a great actress. I want to see more of her. That was a great little thing. Like, oh wait, hang on a second, I know you. So yeah, Bucky and Clara, they had a little thing back in the day. Yeah, and I like that dynamic of Steve and Bucky. Bucky's like this popular, cool, strong guy, and Steve is the complete opposite. I would just wanted to know a little bit more about how they became friends and see him a little bit more in the past. Because then Bucky goes off to war, and you don't see him for a huge amount of the film. Then finally he reappears in it when Steve goes over and fights in the war. And then he falls off a train and dies. And so that's it. No more Bucky. I'm sure he won't be any more significance at any point in the film series from here on. Finally, we've got towards the end of the film, Steve recruits some more people. You get all these little side soldiers. They're all kind of fun, but like in 4, they're all pretty like mono personalities. The best one is the one with the moustache and the bowler hat. But for the most part, they're all pretty forgettable. But unlike For the Dark World, they're just kind of there. They're not really taking up scenes. I don't feel like any of these characters in this film are as distracting or unneeded as they were in 4. So overall, yeah, the characters on the good side, they're all pretty good. I really like them all. But let's talk about the bad guys. Let's talk about Hydra. One quick thing I never understood about Hydra. Their motto is like the mythological beast. Cut off one head and 2 replaces it, and yet their badge is a skull with octopus tentacles. Why is it not a Hydra? I don't know. But we get, first of all, we see Zemo. Not Zemo, Zola. I don't know what it is with me. I keep getting my characters mixed up. But yeah, Zola. I think as I wrote in the notes, Zemo, and just kept running with it. But whenever I say Zemo, I mean Zola. The first time we see him, there's like this magnifying glass, and his head is in the magnifying glass like that. And it's like, ooh. And then it cut to him and he's like a normal man, but that was like a little nod to his comic book character. Just a nice little thing. Obviously, they don't do his comic book character appearance in this film. I guess it's also Zemo's origin story. But one person that they do, probably one of the most comic book accurate looks of them all, is Red Skull. First time we see him there, he's got a normal face, but you get little hints because he's got like this kind of droopy face where he's like, ooh, ooh, like Elastigirl from Doom Patrol, you know, like every now and then it's like, oh no, and he pokes it back up like that. Rita Farr, it just came to me. I was trying to think of it there. Rita Farr from Doom Patrol with the droopy face. But then when he takes it off, he is full Red Skull. For the most part, the makeup looks quite good. Some scenes it's a little bit noticeable, but yeah, for the most part, it does look really good. Unfortunately, looking back, we didn't really see Red Skull as much. I actually think that the character has a lot more potential than what we actually see in the film. It's only really in it for a few scenes, and I think they only really meet maybe twice in the film, once halfway through and once at the end. The first time they meet, they're just talking face to face on this bridge, and then Zemo presses a button and the bridge goes like that with Captain America here and Red Skull here, and they separate like that, and then they go their separate ways. I'm pretty sure Captain America could just jump over that gap, because in literally the next scene we see him do that exact thing. So why he doesn't just jump over to Red Skull and beat him up and capture him then, I don't know. But they don't again see each other now until the very end of the film where they have their final fight, and it's just a shame. I don't feel like they utilized Red Skull much in that film, and then he just disappears from the MCU all the way until Infinity War, where he just becomes this Indiana Jones Templar guarding, not the Holy Grail, but this time the Soul Stone. I think it really was a character that they could have developed over a lot of films. I would have liked to see their rivalry continue in other films, because obviously Hydra continues throughout other films. It's just a shame that Red Skull was just in this one film and only really had a few little scenes. Also on the side of the bad guys, we have the Tesseract. Another funny thing about the Tesseract is that at the beginning of the film it's being hidden. So it's being hidden in this church. I think they say it is in Norway. So it's hidden in this church in Norway. And everybody knows, or at least the mythology around it, is that it was a treasure of Odin's vault. So where are you going to hide the Tesseract? Oh, let's hide it behind the very obvious Norse mural of the Yggdrasil World Tree. Let's hide it in a little shelf where the dragon is that hides in the roots of the World Tree. Out of all of the places, why are you going to put it there? If I saw a big mural of the Yggdrasil World Tree and I saw a dragon on it, the dragon would probably be the first thing I look at. And, you know, it's at like arm height as well, you know. Red Skull just goes there, opens it, and inside is a box. And inside the box, it hasn't even got a lock on it, I don't think, is the Tesseract. So it's hidden in the worst place possible. But yeah, we see the Tesseract in this, which obviously a very important device throughout lots of MCU films, and later on we find out it's an Infinity Stone. So I think this is chronologically the first time we see it. I mean, we kind of see it in a flashback in Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think this is the first time we see it in Earth and in the main flow of the storyline. The Tesseract timeline is a little bit wonky for me, but yeah, so from here it then goes into the hands of Captain Marvel, I believe. But yeah, we get the Tesseract in this film. We don't find out too much about it. We just find out that it's very powerful. We get a hint at the end where it fires up a beam and you get the starry skies that it has a little bit more of a cosmic origin. Obviously, we know from watching Thor that Odin was a real person and a terrible father, and was an alien. So putting two and two together, we know that it has some kind of cosmic origin. And at the end of the film, it beams up Red Skull that sends him into Infinity War, which is a little bit of a shame because in that final fight, it does mean that the Tesseract kind of beats Red Skull and not Captain America. But I guess you could say that Captain America pushed him into the Tesseract. Well, he pushes him near it and he picks it up and then it beams him off into space, and then the Tesseract falls through the spaceship and they find it at the end of the film. So I talked a little bit about action there. Overall, how would I rate the action? It's all right. It's like I say, this film it's very much an origin story of Steve Rogers. It's very much a character piece around Steve Rogers, and whole film is more kind of, it's over a long period of time. It's a lot of cuts, so you get a lot of montages, and you very much cut from battle to battle. Sometimes, when you finally see him fighting as Captain America, you don't get as much of it because it's just like quick clips of him beating up people throughout different times and attacking different Hydra bases. Wish we could have spent some more time on each one of them fights and see him more as Captain America, but I guess that would just make this film hours and hours long. But for what we got, it was good enough. The final fight, like I said, was a little bit disappointing. Steve Rogers and Red Skull just do a few punches, and then Red Skull gets teleported into outer space. But that payoff at the end was more about the character of Steve than the fight with Red Skull. There was one really good action scene that I liked, and that was the scene where Steve Rogers goes full James Bond and he's like kitted out gadget motorbike. Thought that was really good. Could have been a little bit longer, but overall it was fun. Also, I just want to point out that the tanks in this film were massive. What's up with the giant tanks in this film? There's one scene where he's on top of a tank, and I think in my head I'm like, is he on top of a submarine? And he jumps off, he's on a tank. So overall, Captain America, the First Avenger, what do I think about it? When I first saw the film, way back, I didn't really like it. Second viewing, I liked it a little bit more. Now going back to it, and after seeing Captain America's story throughout the rest of the MCU, and having gone back and watched a few more of these early stage Marvel films, I have to say I do like it a lot more. It's definitely a film that has grown on me over the years. It's not a perfect film, but it's a good origin story of Steve Rogers and definitely an interesting watch. I wish we could have spent a little bit more time with each of the characters, because unlike 4, I actually like a lot of these side characters in it, and what we see of them in this film, we only see them in snippets, and sadly, because this film was set in World War One, a lot of these characters are now kind of dead. So, obviously we've got the Peggy Carter TV series, which I haven't actually watched, so maybe I should check that out. Let me know if it's any good. But yeah, I think it was a solid film. Not one of the best, it's just a good watch. It's not one that I would put in regularly. So Captain America, the First Avenger, for me, it's a blue tier. A high blue tier, but a blue tier. A solid film, one that's more enjoyable on rewatches, I find. And overall, just a good film. Not the best, not the worst. So that was it. That was my thoughts on Captain America, the First Avenger. Next, we got the big one. We got Avengers / Avengers Assemble, depending on where you're from. For me, it was Avengers Assemble because we had a film way back called The Avengers. I'm very much looking forward to going back and rewatching this one and seeing how it holds up compared to later Avengers films. Don't think I've watched it since I watched Ultron, so a good few years since I last saw that Avengers film. So I'm very much looking forward to it. What do you think of Captain America, the First Avenger? How would you compare it to the rest of the MCU? How would you compare it going back and rewatching it? Did you like my video? Did you like my thoughts? If so, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been Hegassen, and I'll talk to you next time. Cheers! There we go.